In this video, I'm going to give you my final picks for UFC 306. We're going to talk about lineup construction, strategy, just all things DFS so you know what to do on this slate. As always, you can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. Now, before we get into any of this, if you haven't already, go back and watch the predictions video from earlier in the week. That's a full card breakdown. We talk about different things and we're going to talk about in this video, so you're going to want to marry the two. Go back, watch that, then watch this, and you got the whole enchilada. And we're going to switch up the flow a little bit because we only have 10 fights this week, so we don't have too many fights to go through. I could sit here and go through the value plays, then the cash game lineup, then the tournament lineup, which you are all accustomed to, but we're not going to do that. Instead, we're just going to kind of flow through what the card looks like, going from salary top down, talk about each one of these fighters, just touch on a little bit of lineup construction stuff along the way. Tell me after you've gotten a chance to get this information if you prefer this way or the other way. Let me know in the comments. But nevertheless, here we go. The most expensive fighter on the slate is Raul Rosas Jr. at 9,700. Now, typically, when I look at the most expensive fighter on the slate, I'm not too keen on playing them just because sometimes you're sacrificing a lot of salary. If there are a whole lot of live dogs on the card, you might not need them. But if you look at the betting lines for this card, if you watch a predictions video, you know how I feel about a lot of the underdogs this week. There are dogs on this card, and Raul Rosas Jr. at 9,700 has easily the best matchup on the entire slate. And we've seen what he can do in wins in the UFC. I mean, beating Christian Rodriguez as an undefeated fighter is next to impossible. We understand that. But in his UFC debut, 106, 133, 111. So outside of that loss, he's always really paid off his salary. He's reached that scoring ceiling, and he has as high of a scoring ceiling as anybody on the card not named Merab. And the way I see this fight going is he probably gets a takedown, lands some ground and pound, Aoriqileng shoots back up to his feet, he gets another takedown, and then he finds a submission. So if we unpack that a little bit, you're probably going to get 2 takedowns, that's 10 points. You're going to get some points for control time, you're going to get some points for significant strikes. Let's say that comes out to around 12 points. Couple that with a first round finish, that's another 90 points. You're looking at a situation where he's going to score north of 110 here, and at 9,700, I don't think it's crazy for him to just be a lock in your lineups this week. That is if you're only playing a few lineups.
Write that down, write that down!
If you're somebody who runs 20, 50, 150 lineups, anything north of 20, I'd say, you don't need to have 100% exposure to Raul Rosas Jr. because a lot of people are going to get here. It's good chalk, but a lot of people are going to get here. So you can get different by not playing him this week. That doesn't mean to play the other side. I don't think you should roster Aoriqileng at all. Even if you're running 150 lineups, I don't even like a 1% allocation because that lineup's just dead in the water. We know why he's here. We know what he's here to do. He's here to take a fall for Raul Rosas Jr. to open the card with a W. Don't play him. But if you don't want to play Raul Rosas Jr. in a handful of lineups to get different, I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, if you are playing in a big contest where there are 150 max entries, like the biggest contest this week, or even the 20 max, but you're only running, say, less than 10 lineups, you should have Raul Rosas Jr. in all of them. And if you're playing single entry contests, you should have Raul Rosas Jr. in that lineup as well. Will he come in at 70% ownership? Sure, but there's only 10 fights on the card. If he scores more than, say, anybody else on the slate, you need him in your lineup. And he's the first fight of the night, so you get yourself off on a good foot, you're feeling good, you like what you see. If we close Raul Rosas Jr., Yasmin Jauregui is somebody who's very interesting this week, somebody who might find herself in the official DFS strategy guide on KunithMMA.com. You start looking at the game log, absolute goose egg at 9,300, oh my, you never want to play her again. 6,800 against Sam Hughes at 9,500, oh my, I don't want no part of that. Even 65 points against Yazmin Lucindo, you want no part of that either. The 129 against Nunes, this is what we want. We want that ceiling score from Yasmin Jauregui. Will she get there? I think she can. I think we have the right dance partner for her to go out there, look good, get knockdowns, and get a finish inside the first 2 rounds. Ketlen Souza is the type of fighter that's going to fight in that low stance, looking to throw a lot of power, coming at you on a straight line, and I think Yasmin Jauregui styles on her. And last week on the DFS strategy guide on KunithMMA.com, we talked about Jacqueline Amorim. She was our favorite pay up option, and I think Yasmin Jauregui might find herself in the same spot this week because on a card where you only have 10 fights, Raul Rosas Jr. is pretty much a lock in your lineups. You have to find ways to get different. I think Jauregui can help you do that. Out of all of the favorites, I think she pulls some of the lowest ownership, if not the lowest ownership on the entire slate, second to one other fighter that we're going to talk about shortly, women's MMA. expensive, not a lot of room on the slate if you like the favorites, and I know a lot of people do. Yasmin Jauregui, though, somebody you really should be considering, but let's just plug Raul Rosas Jr. in there. Daniel Zellhuber is somebody who's really interesting this week. Hasn't broken 85 DraftKings points yet, and he's dealing with a guy who is super aggressive, a guy who's going to have success on his own, and a guy who has a great chin, so he probably doesn't get finished here either. What we have seen from Ribovics, though, is that he could be taken down. I think if Daniel Zellhuber wanted to, he could probably get this fight to the ground, but that's not really his forte. He wants to strike, he wants to keep it exciting, he wants to fight at range. Not somebody I'm dying to play this week. If anything, I would recommend rostering the other side of the lineup, but if you watch the predictions video, you know I like me some Daniel Zellhuber this week. Joshua Van kind of finds himself in a similar spot. He has scored north of 100 DraftKings points, but against Edgar Chairez, I think he's in a tough spot. I don't like that he's favored. I don't like that he's this expensive. I think that Edgar Chairez is very interesting this week with his submission upside, with the power that he has, catching Joshua Van at the best possible time as well. If you wanted to plug Joshua Van in there, I'm not mad at you. We'll build a lineup and see what that kind of looks like. Not somebody I'm dying to play, but let's say you did go the other way with Ribovics. Let's say you came here with Valentina Shevchenko. Let's say you came up here to somebody like Manuel Torres at 8,200. 8,100 left over. This is where you have to come to Merab, I think, in this situation, and we'll talk more about that as we go through the card. But real quick, if you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm. You know how the algorithm works, and if you got somebody you know, somebody you care about in your life playing DFS this week, share this video with them. Help them get the tools so that they could possibly be successful. Don't save all the good stuff for yourself. Don't be greedy, because that's going to come back. You know what I mean? If we blow this up and keep going, you got Diego Lopes at 8,700. Always going to pull a lot of ownership after what he looked like in his UFC debut, and I mean 3 straight times he really got it done for you. Against Dan Ige, not so much. I mean, this is pretty low output over 3 rounds, got 1 takedown. He didn't really do all that much. 70 points in a 3-round win. I don't love it. I think you get really good leverage playing the other side if you wanted Brian Ortega, and I know people are like, oh, look at the picture of Brian Ortega, look at his physique. I'm not really worried about the man's physique. It's not as if Brian Ortega is known for being jacked, right? He's always going to come into these fights looking like a half melted candle. That's normal for him. Like, the genetics have blessed him with pretty eyes and great hair, but an L build. We'll talk more about Brian Ortega as we get down there, but Diego Lopes, somebody who I think you have a buyer beware sticker on because of the ownership that he's coming in at typically. Now, Rodriguez, somebody who should get a lot of ownership, I think he goes out there and dominates. He's great on the ground, super tough on the feet, he's throwing heat. Osbourne is going to be sucking wind like Shannon Sharp in the second round. I think that Ronaldo Rodriguez absolutely puts it on him at 8,600. Sugar Sean O'Malley, I think, is a super interesting play this week as well. He's got 5 rounds to work. Do I think it goes to full 5? I do not. I think if you wanted to take the under in this fight, it makes sense. What worries me, however, about Sean O'Malley is, yes, you've got these knockouts, like you have the not a knockout, but 5 rounds of dominance over Chito Vera, 122 points, 30 of that comes from the decision win, but the output is absurd. Chito has durability that Wolverine would be envious of, so I don't think that Merab is going to be able to take 200 plus significant strikes from a puncher like this. No way, no how, not happening. I think the only bantamweight on planet Earth that's taken this kind of beating from this guy right here is Marlon Chito Vera, so I don't think we have access to this kind of scoring ceiling. Now, I think we do get a situation like we did against Aljamain Sterling, where knocks him out in the second round after he finds his range. Now, on that card at 7,300, yeah, you needed that. But on this card where he's 8,500, he's favored, 91 points doesn't get you there. You look at all these other knockout losses, fantastic, and I think I can walk back what I said. I don't think too many other fighters are taking that punishment. I mean, Chris Moutinho did. But you see those ceiling scores, but now that he's fighting higher level competition, I don't know if we're going to see that as much. Like the Pedro Munoz fight, I think he was on his way to scoring 40, 50 points in a decision win. I don't think he was going to light it up at all. Petr Yan scores 65 points, not very good. 91 against Aljamain Sterling. Again, that week it was good, but this week it would not be good. 122 points, I don't think is on the table. I think a lot of people get to Sean O'Malley. If you want to roster him, great, that's fine. I don't think this is someone you need to get to like in a single entry contest or anything like that. Now, when you look at this fight though, on the other side, Merab at 7,700, goodness me, get out of there. Just the most absurd game log you've ever seen, right? 111, 167, 78 because he couldn't take down Jose Aldo and just held him for 15 minutes. Awful stuff. 164, 108, 74 against Dodson. Again, it's not chaining together an absurd amount of takedowns, holding him for a lot of the fight, not doing all that well. 148, 136, 124, 129. Even 73 points in a decision loss, even 99 points in a decision loss is pretty crazy. Merab is DraftKings gold. If you want to play Merab, go for it. You just worry that he gets knocked out in the first 3 rounds and doesn't reach that scoring ceiling. But if you think Merab wins, or you're running multiple lineups, or even if you just want to take a chance on him in your single entry contest, he is a great play. We'll take out Sean O'Malley, we'll put Merab in there. And if you had to build out the rest of this lineup, if you wanted to get different, let's say you went with Bahamondes at 8,000, you came down here, grabbed somebody like Chairez at 7,300, 9,200 left over, you could grab Raul Rosas Jr. and come down here, grab somebody in this mid-range. I think if most people found themselves here, they're probably clicking this Diego Lopes button. But if we blow that up and keep going, after we have Sean O'Malley, we have Irene Aldana, who's probably the favorite on this card, who pulls the lowest amount of ownership, and it's valid. 88 points in one of the best fights you're ever going to see against Carol Hosa, but she doesn't get the knockdowns, she doesn't get the takedowns, doesn't control her for any seconds of this fight, just pure output. You're not really going to see her break 100 DraftKings points consistently. She's only done it twice in the UFC, despite having finishes, despite having performance of the night bonuses, going to war. She doesn't really score that well on DraftKings typically. Now, does that mean that she doesn't score well this week? No, it doesn't. And sometimes you can use that to your advantage. You can look at the game log and think, this fighter has not gotten it done time and time again. Eventually they're going to get it done. She's only 8,400. I know Norma Dumont is pretty popular this week. I don't expect her to be popular on DraftKings, but I know she's a popular bet for a lot of people out there. I know a lot of people are picking Norma Dumont to win this fight, so that's also going to pull Irene Aldana's ownership down. And if you take a look at this fight against Santos, 117 DraftKings points at 8,300. She's 8,400 this week, probably one of the lowest owned fighters on the slate, definitely the lowest owned favorite on the slate. She breaks the slate with a performance that scores her north of 95 DraftKings points this week. Nobody's going to be playing her in your lineups, especially if you're running like a single entry contest. I think Irene Aldana is extremely sneaky this week, and I think Yasmin Jauregui is extremely sneaky this week, like we said before. If you want to play the leverage game, the ownership game, you plug both of these fighters into your lineup, you're getting way different, which can help offset the chalk that you have here, but now you got to get real cheap, real fast. You got to come with somebody like Ribovics, like Chairez, maybe even somebody like Brian Ortega, leave 700 salary on the table, playing kind of stars and scrubs here, and I don't hate that at all. I think this makes a lot of sense, but let's go on. So after Irene Aldana, who we got? Alexa Grasso. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't like Alexa Grasso on her own. Last time out, she scored 94 points. Now if she gets an extra 30 points, then she's in a good spot. She scores 124 points, breaks the slate. Before that, 4th round submission over Valentina Shevchenko, 91 points. She scored 99 points in a 5-round win over Vivi Araujo. If she's not breaking 100 DraftKings points and Valentina Shevchenko is getting takedowns, winning rounds, winning minutes, winning moments, her ceiling gets a bit limited. So playing Alexa Grasso on her own, I don't love that at all. But let's say if you did want to play Alexa Grasso, well, how do you play it? You can come here to the other side, look at the scores that Valentina Shevchenko has posted against Alexa Grasso. 91 points last time out, and if the judges got that right, you're in a good spot. Before that, she scored 81 points, right? 91 points in the last fight, that was a draw. So if you combine her score with Alexa Grasso's score, you're looking at 185 points between the two of them. That's pretty good. Now, if the judge that gave Grasso a 10-8 round in the 5th round actually did their job, then Valentina Shevchenko wins. And it's really not about one fighter winning over the other in this situation. It's about 30 points that are unaccounted for, because if they scored 185 points between the two of them and there's 30 points out there that should have been captured, you're looking at upside of 215 DraftKings points, which would be the equivalent of getting 107.5 DraftKings points from each of your fighters. If that happens, you could see a situation where stacking the co-main event, even in tournaments, ends up optimal. And if the first 2 fights are any indication of what this fight is going to look like, I think we get a high score from both of these fighters. And I don't think they're going to come out there and have a feeling out process, and they're going to be careful, and they really got to get this W. I think we're going to see all out, balls to the wall action from these two from start to finish. If you got an average DraftKings score of, say, north of 100 points, if they combine for more than 200 points, and you've stacked them, especially in tournaments. You're getting way different. I think you're in a fantastic spot. 84.50 left over per fighter. This is by far what you need to be doing in cash games. But now if you find yourself here and you start searching for ceiling, you could grab Merab. Got 8,700 left over. Let's say you went with Manuel Torres. I think that fight right there is very important. Let's say you went with Raul Rosas Jr. at 9,700, and now you have 8,200 left over per fighter. You got to take a chance somewhere. Let's say you went with Edgar Chairez. I'm happy with that. 900 salary left over on the table. You have the easiest matchup on the slate. You have potentially 200 plus points right here. Merab might be 200 points his damn self. You have a fight that definitely doesn't go the distance, and Manuel Torres has lit it up each and every time. And then Edgar Chairez is your live underdog at 7,300. If you didn't want him, dealer's choice. You can grab anybody down here. Very sneaky stack this week. And then lastly, you do have Manuel Torres, who we just touched on. I think this fight, again, is super important. Ignacio Bahamondes is going to fight for your money. He's going to finish this guy if Manuel Torres doesn't get him out of there in the first round. Somebody you really like because of the output, the finishing upside. Ignacio Bahamondes is cool. Now, I said I don't like playing Alexa Grasso by herself, and I don't. So I do think that you would stack this fight, but if you didn't like the idea of doing that and you just had to play one side of this matchup, although I think Alexa Grasso wins, DFS, like we talk about all the time, with DraftKings, with MMA, you don't always play the fighter that you think is going to win. You play the fighter that can score you the most points. And I think that Valentina Shevchenko in a win at 7,900 is just better value. You come here to Irene Aldana, I think that's cool. I think if you came up here to Rodriguez, that's cool. I think if you came down here to Brian Ortega, I like that. 9,600, so we can't quite get up to Raul Rosas Jr. So this is going to be one of those lineups that doesn't roster the best play on the slate, in my opinion. 9,200 for Yasmin Jauregui. Cool with this too. And before we get into the rest of the slate, if you want access to the DFS strategy guide, lineup optimizer, data model and projections, which a lot of people are using for their daily or their pick'ems, like the prize picks, Underdog Fantasy, who's a sponsor of the channel. If you use promo code Kunith, they'll match your first deposit up to $250 in bonus cash. Cool stuff over there. That's linked in the description. Official betting article as well. And for those of you that don't know, if we go to the community tab, we absolutely smacked a sweep of a parlay last week. I'll show you what this looked like. This is something that happens pretty regularly around here. It doesn't happen every week, no, but it's happened once every year for the 3 years that we've done this. This is kind of stuff that will make your year, right? And we're going to be coming with another one this week as well. So if you want access to all of that, you can visit kunithmma.com. $24.99 a month, full disclosure. Whoa. The site costs money. Oh my goodness. That's for access to everything. If you just want the lineup optimizer, you're somebody who runs a lot of lineups, it's just $5.99 on the site. You're not going to find a cheaper optimizer than that, but the optimizer and everything else, $24.99 on the site. And as I'm saying this, it sounds like my computer's going to explode. Sometimes I'd be able to get this stuff out faster if I had a better computer. So one of you rich followers out there, if you want to send your boy a PC, send me an email on the channel. And I promise I won't use it just to play Fortnite. All right, I'll probably play a little bit of Fortnite on it, but I'll also use it for Kunith MMA stuff, which we're trying to do some new things. But anyway, if we go down here, start looking at some of these underdog plays on the slate, we've got Ignacio Bahamondes, we just touched on that. Valentina Shevchenko, we kind of touched on it as well. Norma Dumont, hell no, baby. I don't want any part of Norm on this card. No thank you. I think it's a bad matchup, and also she just doesn't really reach that scoring ceiling that you would want from her often enough for me. Not really interested. Again, Merab, absurd amount of upside because of those takedowns. I don't think he takes down the very slippery Sean O'Malley. I think he's going to get a couple of knuckle sandwiches and get out of there, but he is somebody you need to play. And again, I don't think O'Malley is even worth rostering this week. I think if you do want to play the main event, you want that late hammer at the end of a very short slate, Merab is your guy. Ode Osbourne's interesting. I think you can get some pretty good leverage here if you go with Ode. I don't think a lot of people are going to get here. First glance, I thought he might be a live underdog that I'd go with in the predictions video, but once you dig into it, you start to see what he looked like in the last couple of fights. Just not all that impressive. Against Tyson Nam, knocked out in the first round. You don't really see that a lot at flyweight. Zaruk Adashev probably was never UFC caliber. Charles Johnson took that fight on very short notice. They were both gassed by the third, and you can argue that he lost that fight. Against Asu Almabayev, that was one-way traffic, really didn't get anything done. 4 significant strikes landed after a round was already completed. And then against Jafel Filio, he was putting up Derek Lewis numbers, so I'm not really interested in Ode Osbourne this week. T-City, my guy. You got to watch out for somebody like Brian Ortega, because did he quit in this fight? No, he was injured. And then we saw what it would actually look like if these two faced off in that second fight, and he really puts it on Yair. He was in complete control as soon as the second round started, as soon as he started moving forward, as if the first round kind of woke him up, right? Because it was a bit of a long layoff. He really hadn't competed for almost 2 years. He was coming off injury, so he probably wasn't training all that much in that time, at least not early on. But after that first round, he really came out swinging, and Yair Rodriguez just kind of wilted in front of him. I could see Diego Lopes honestly doing the same thing. Volkanovski goes 5 rounds with Volk. Chan Sung Jung, one of his best performances to date, puts it on Chan Sung Jung, knocking him down, taking him down, landing a lot of strikes. Really looked fantastic there. Against Max Holloway, still landed a lot of strikes. That was Max Holloway's best performance outside of maybe the Calvin Kattar fight. What would Diego Lopes look like over 5 rounds against Max Holloway? Right, and then Frankie Edgar knocks him out. Cub Swanson submits him. I think that Brian Ortega is somebody who's extremely sneaky, one of the more dangerous guys in featherweight, perennial contender, fought for the belt multiple times, has beaten former champions, has beaten former title challengers, being interim champ last time out. I think Brian Ortega is someone who is heavily slept on for whatever reason. Really no shame in losing to some of the best fighters the division and the UFC has ever seen. I think a lot of people just are riding high on what Diego Lopes has looked like recently, but this is a big step up in competition. Edgar Chairez, we've plugged him into several lineups. You know how I feel about this. I think that Chairez has that submission upside. He was giving Tatsuro Taira hell, and he was easily Tatsuro Taira's most difficult opponent in the UFC. Esteban Ribovics is somebody who I think gets a lot of ownership this week, although I'm not really all that high on him. I think at 7,200, a lot of people get here because of the price, because of the knockout upside, because of what he looked like last time out against Terrence McKinney, but knocking out Terrence McKinney is kind of a 50-50 proposition. Kamuela Kirk, I don't even know where he's at. Razgabov kind of took him down at will, although he did fight hard, and I think if you just look at damage, he probably should have won that fight. But Esteban Ribovics, not a terrible play if you want to reach down there at 7,200. Ketlen Souza, not interested. Aoriqileng, even at 6,500, you couldn't ask me, you couldn't pay me to do it. So that'll do it for the DFS strategy of the week. If you want the guide, if you want all that good stuff, you can visit kunithmma.com, linked in the description and in a pinned comment. You can also visit Underdog Fantasy. That's where you could play Pick'em. That's where you could do it for NFL, which every island game, like the Monday night, Thursday night, Sunday night, even the Sunday main slate, they're going to have these promotions where it's Travis Kelce over a half a yard, CeeDee Lamb over a half a yard, Josh Allen over a half a yard passing. So you could take advantage of those and slowly grind up your bankroll if you wanted to do that over there. That's also linked in the description and in a pinned comment, and I'll put my Underdog Fantasy slip for UFC 306 up there as well. But that'll do it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm, and I will see you in 2 weeks.